Paulius Dragunas, the founder of East Peak, another hot new trail running startup. Now our guest on the show. Paulius, welcome to the program. How are you?
I am good. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so Lutzi, let me just give you a quick intro here because we don't usually put intros on our podcast. Paulius is a card-carrying member of the San Francisco Bay Area, Marin County trail running community here. He is also, like many members of the community, somebody who works in the technology sector, or at least has up to this point in his career, and now working on something that is quite exciting, that has people turning their heads not only just here around Mount Tam and in the close vicinity, but also certain world-dominating athletes, and it's a story we're going to tell here on the pod. Lutzi, do you want to kick us off here?
You know what, Dylan? I think what's kind of fun is that there are a lot of people who live in the Bay Area so that they can be on the ground floor to spot trends and spot emerging companies. And I kind of love this for us, that you're also in the Bay Area on the ground spotting emerging companies and then bringing founders onto the pod. This is perfect. We're doing it.
It's great. And I mean, it's a recent theme here on the show, right? We had Paulius, we just had Terragnota, Alex King on, even going back to the archive, Kyle Siegel from Raid. We had the normal folks. Kitworks. But that's, I think, peripheral to trail. My point was, we have a lot of very interesting founders in the trail running space right now, people who are bringing a very unique perspective to this growing category. Paulius, enough bro banter between me and Lutzi. Maybe just first, high level, when and where did the idea for East Peak hit you? Like, what was the inspiration before we start going into some of the details?
Sure. I would say the inspiration for East Peak came running up East Peak every Wednesday, with what I found out to be one of the most supportive communities I've ever been a part of. I was the first employee at a startup called Loom, which is a video recording startup that was founded, I think, about 10 years ago now. And what ended up happening is the Bay Area never really felt like home to me. And I kept kind of traveling around thinking maybe I can finally be part of the tech scene and just feel as part of the tribe. And then when eventually I found my tribe, everybody moved away. I moved to Marin County kind of looking for self-regulation. And self-regulation for me is trail running. So I end up accidentally running up Mount Tam as my first run since I moved here, saying I would never do this again. And as time went on, my now business partner, George, actually went and showed me, hey, people run up this hill every single Wednesday.
6 a.m.
6 a.m. every Wednesday. So then what I kept doing is I just kept showing up, kept being the last one on the peak. Everyone kept beating me. It would take me 90 minutes to get to the top. But I think what I knew is this feels good. People keep asking me to come back for some reason, and I don't know why, but it's something to do. I love it. I'd go down to my local running store, San Francisco Running Company, and I'd start looking at gear all of a sudden, getting a little bit more into it, getting a little bit faster, trying to figure out how to be smarter on the trail. And I'd look at the brands, and nothing really felt like what I felt going up this mountain every single day. Or not every single day, but running around the mountain every single day.
Yeah.
And then I started asking around, who is currently capturing the soul of trail running as we see it in Marin County? And I'd ask some friends, eventually some pro athletes, and everyone would have a good hard think. And they would say, I don't think anyone completely gets it quite yet. So my brain, unfortunately, doesn't work in a way where I can separate out my work away from my life. And as soon as that started clicking, I started thinking, can I start focusing my life to be just around running and trail running specifically for the next decade or two. And then I thought, well, how hard can it be to make a pair of socks? It turns out really hard. If you want to make something that's good for running 100 miles, especially if you don't know how to find a factory, what fabrics to even start using. But 14 months later, I would say that we'd have one of the best socks out there for running your 100-mile race or beyond. And so, yeah, that's what inspired it. I think ultimately we want eSpeak to be something that is reflective of and pays respect to the community that we just love dearly here in Marin County.
It's interesting to think about the approach to the entire thing where it wasn't necessarily, if I'm hearing you right, it wasn't necessarily about like, I want a product that solves a problem. It was, I want a brand that solves a problem, right? Does that resonate? So what, you started off what it sounds like is socks as the starting point for that thing. As you were sort of building into this, what were the first things that you were thinking about? Were you actually just trying to see how hard it would be to make one product and see where it went from there? Were you developing the brand identity and then concurrently doing different product lines? Like, how were you thinking about kind of that first step out the door when it came to building eSpeak?
Yeah. So I think that starts with determining what your mission, vision, and values are, and then working our way backwards to figure out what products actually fit that.
Wow, you do come from Silicon Valley, don't you?
Sure do. And it's also balancing that with the reality of we haven't done this before, so let's just experiment and see what fits. And Debo, you've said this on the podcast before, and see what the company actually wants to be over time.
Yep.
And so where we landed was generally technology is making things faster for us. Something that resonates with me quite well is during my wedding day, my godfather came up to me and said, "No wonder you live in nature. Technology is made to make you not think. So you escape it to slow down, to reflect, to actually have time to think." And so we made the mission increase access to nature. It's as simple as that. And from there, we started figuring out, well, we want to increase access to nature, but we don't necessarily know how to make a complicated item quite yet. So let's start small and see if we can make best of anything. After we realized the socks were going to take more than 12 months to make, we said, okay, let's just make anything as fast as humanly possible. Doesn't have to make money. Something that's durable. It's going to last a long time. We can put our logo on it and see if people want it, see what it's like to sell. So we made some caps. People like the colorway. We had the brand work done by a friend of mine. And then I went to, once again, our local running store. Do you guys want any caps? And they got all excited. They said, sure. They started selling out. They needed a reorder. It's like, okay. This wasn't much more than an exercise of choosing a colorway and putting it on a cap, and we don't make any money off of these. But all of a sudden, people are reaching out to us saying, do you want to make caps for our race? These caps don't make any money, but sure. I like being at trail races. So let's go find out what it's like to sponsor a trail race. And then we kind of continue to experiment and iterate from there. And thankfully, we've now taken relationships with races, and they've gone from, hey, we're losing a bunch of money on each event to we're making a few dollars and there's a marketing opportunity, and we generally know how to do it. So I would say the exercise of making that cap before the sock was ready was really useful in terms of understanding partnerships.
Okay, so let's come back and talk about a bunch of the X's and O's about how you built the brand in a bit, but I think it's also interesting just your background and how it's mapped to this experience so far. I think one of the themes that Lutzi and I have found over doing many of these podcasts and just in our own careers is that oftentimes bringing a non-traditional mindset to a new space leads to a fertile ground for success, or at least just a different approach that resonates with a community. And I think for you, having no background in product development, but who has lived more or less in cyberspace, working on technology companies like Loom, which I'm sure many people in our audience have used personally. Tell us a little bit about, that transition between being a technology person versus making physical product. Any especially salient learnings as you've been negotiating this early phase?
I think a little bit of extra context is I had an enormous amount of student debt, and I did spin up a white label Amazon business to sell mosquito repellent bands to try and pay off as much of my student debt as possible. So I did do physical goods, but in a very narrow, focused way. And then eventually I realized I ended up actually joining Loom and realized, hey, I'm just going to go all in on this. I can't keep selling mosquito repellent bands. So I spun that down and paid off a good chunk of my student debt. But after going, I think the things that I really notice is with software, there's instant gratification, right? You push a button, something's out to the world, where in the physical world, you have to, most of the time, work across cultures as well. And so the first sample always comes back, usually late, and it's just heartbreaking because you want it to be so good and it just never is. And the first sample of the ice bandana, or the first sock that we made, I got it and I'm like, well, can only go up from here. Yeah. So I take the experimentation mindset from Silicon Valley, but I do have to combine that with, I think, a new skill of patience, and then something that has resonated with me that one of the Norda founders told us is just don't ship something you don't absolutely love. So it's actually now baked into our company values that it has to pass the love test for us, and it has to pass a product has to pass the love test for the community before it ships, or it just doesn't go. If I make a shirt, you will know that it's a shirt that I will always reach for first in the closet before I go out for a run.
I love that. Pass the love test.
Yep.
So I have to ask you, because it's just popping into my mind, the founder of Loom. So Loom was recently sold to Atlassian, and I remember sending you this link when it came out, but the founder of Loom published something like, I'm rich, but I'm miserable, after selling his company.
Yeah, Vinay. I'm rich and I don't know what to do with my life.
Yeah. So I don't know really the question here, other than, is there anything about having been the first employee at Loom and going through that acquisition process and now landing at Atlassian, and you still work there, we should say, that has taught you about having this maybe like longer term mindset, or at least like not an outcome oriented mindset? Because that's something that we talk about as athletes all the time, especially in trail running. It feels like there's maybe a parallel here.
I think the early set of employees fell in love with the work, and I like trail running because it's just an immense amount of work. Starting a new company in a new industry is also just an immense amount of work. And I think I just carry that through, and I understand that we're going to make mistakes. Let's just give ourselves an opportunity to kind of work through the problem until we strike a little bit of magic, figure out what that wedge is, and then expand from there.
What's it been like since the launch? I mean, have you felt, you obviously have some early signals in terms of the sales that happen through, the local retailers and stuff like that. How has it been sort of managing the process, like falling in love with the work and the product itself? But there are external signals that come along with this, right? The sales, the who's following you on Instagram and whatever else. How are you balancing out that? Do you ever feel, imposter syndrome, or ever feel like you're looking at these other brands and you're in the same category as them? Like how do you manage kind of the mental side of this whole thing?
Yeah, imposter syndrome every day.
Come on, dude. After your mosquito repellent business?
I think You have to just simply focus. To me, it's focusing on the work and making something. I think above all else in my life, what I've realized is that I can't help but try and make things, whatever they are. And that's what brings me the joy. And I generally just tend to just go towards the joy. And that's part of the reason why I kept showing up to these local trail runs. It started with Wednesdays, and then there was Saturdays, and then there was Thursdays, and now there's Trek Tuesdays, and you can go to a group run all week around here. But I think there was quite a bit of a grind before the Ice Bandana, before Killian, and before the Poppy Socks that we released. So my general design philosophy is pick a simple fabric, learn how to work with it, and make something really, really good with it. Rather than necessarily add features that you can point an arrow to that are more easily marketable. We might be shooting ourselves in the foot with it a little bit, but I truly do believe we made one of the best socks in the market, and up until recently, we haven't really known how to sell it. Then we put just a wonderful California poppy design on them. They're sold out at this point. I think we have maybe 10 socks of one size left. And what we find is people come for the design and they stay for the performance now. So they buy a cute pair of socks and then they realized, oh, I can easily go run a marathon in these. Let's go run an ultra, see what that looks like. And all of a sudden that's starting to work for us. At the same time, I'm over here before Western States trying to go and just try different pitches to different stores to figure out how to get a B2B motion going. Our goal for the year was pretty simple. We didn't know exactly what we'd release or how much we'd be able to sell, but let's just aim for being with 5 retailers and selling about 7,000 units of anything, whatever we managed to release. And I drop off a pair of socks, doesn't work. I drop off a pair of socks in another retailer, doesn't work. I send a bunch of cold emails. Sometimes they reply. Then they say how new companies churn out of their store. They just shut their doors and they go have to find a new partner. So they'd rather stick with a more conservative brand that's been around for a while. Western States happens. Everybody wants an Ice Bandana. Sure, I'll send you an Ice Bandana, but I will also send you a pair of socks in every colorway and every size for your store to try. A week or two later comes by. All the employees loved our socks. Can we have 75 pairs? And so that's flipped. Where before I was really seeking retailers, now I check my inbox, and once a week there's at least one new one that's wants an Ice Bandana or something else. That's been our wedge. And then I send them extra stuff. I send them our full catalog, and then they sign up for more.
I love that come for the design, stay for the performance. I dig that.
Well, and also it reminds me of the Jeremy Dunn episode, who made the Portland Airport sock carpet design that instantly sold out. A similar philosophy, like making a visual thing that connects with especially people who are runners here in the Bay Area. The California Poppy is a special and significant time of the year when we're all getting fit in the spring and things are green and the poppy is out. It elicits an emotion, right? And so combining the emotion with the performance of the product, then we're cooking with gas, so to speak. All right, so we have to talk about the wedge moment, which was the Ice Bandana. But I think before we do, spending another minute on the San Francisco community, I think it's important to just kind of establish this, because you've mentioned it a couple of times, not only the group of people that you run with, but SFRC, the San Francisco Running Company, is also an institution here. And to me, it feels like the perfect validation or the perfect opportunity to solicit feedback from your friends, your training partners, a local retailer. Like, those are really important for a new founder who's building products, to get feedback and to validate it with people who know how to use it. Have there been any like really important interactions with members of the San Francisco Bay Area trail running community that have in some way informed a product direction that you've taken?
All the time. If I speak to another founder in trail, there's an aspect of athlete testing that they do, and they talk about how we have to go and do athlete testing. That doesn't exist to me. I just text some amount of friends that are doing some 100 or 200 mile race anywhere around here, and there's plenty of us. And the feedback comes within a day. And so our iteration speed's actually really fast, to the point where I realized it's a bit of a superpower that doesn't necessarily exist. And then on top of that, SFRC itself has been so kind to us. They'll take most of our products, give us feedback in terms of sales, what people are saying, and everything else. So it's a great place to just go and experiment with a product, a new colorway, something else, see what sells, what doesn't. And so I really appreciate them being almost an incubator to us, if that makes sense, because then we know what things sell well in store and which things don't.
Yep.
And so we get a lot of signal from the community in terms of just simply developing the gear. And then the retail side of things, I just have someone I can quickly bounce ideas off of that's local, that I can go to and show a product as soon as it comes in while I'm still excited about it.
Yeah.
You've got that testing ground just like built in. What an important thing. And of all the testing grounds to have access to, like the Bay Area, I mean.
Plus, what I think is important here is the group of people who are in the community that Paulius and I run with are a lot of really smart, interesting people who in a lot of cases have like very interesting perspective from their unique careers. And yeah, just like being within that environment and around those types of people is, I think, where you can draw a lot of inspiration and get a lot of really interesting and important feedback that would hopefully contribute to the success of East Peak in the long term. So the wedge product, this is a very important story. The ice bandana, a certain Catalan runner named Kilian Jornet, never heard of him personally, but he finished third place at Western States. And he was rocking your product, and it's such a great story. So, Paulius, start from the beginning. How did East Peak come to be connected with the greatest of all time?
Sure. We have to go, because I've figured out what the butterfly effect was to actually get to that point. And it came back to just experimentation and us being invited to sponsor the California Classic 100K and make some caps for them. At the time, we had nothing to sell. But sure, we'll set up a tent. Norda was the title sponsor, so people would go to the Norda tent, check out their Biodynama shoes, exactly ask questions about how exactly they made it. But we'd be right next to them with a nice rug, a lounge setup, some cold drinks, and they'd come and sit down and hang out with us. And that's where we eventually met a photographer named Sean Hayworth that goes to every single trail race of note in the United States and takes photos. Then as we began to actually develop the ice bandana, we realized this is going to be a seasonal product. We think it truly is best in market at this point. What is the best way to market it? Well, we know we have to get it on some athlete somewhere, somehow. I have a baby coming. I can't really make it out to any event. We know Sean's going to be at Western States training camp. Okay. Let's just send him out with 8 bandanas and see what happens. Hopefully some athlete really likes it. Western States training camp comes. Sean says, hey, I didn't really get much footage, but I have this one cell phone video of Rod Farvard really liking the bandana. Okay, yeah, we'll take that. Can we use it? Sure, yeah, no problem. And it's the perfect marketing video where it's a person of note in the industry you care about complimenting and joking about your product. We run the ad. A few days later, I wake up, I check my Slack channel as I normally do for sales, and there's Killian's email. I scream a little bit. And I decide I'm going to do nothing about this until it's Western States time. I'm assuming he's buying 10 or 20 different variants. He's going to try on what he's going to try on, and we'll just see what happens.
So basically what you're saying is you wake up and check the Slack channel where the inbound sales happen, and you see Kilian Jornet has ordered a product, you paying for it using his own money.
Yeah.
Wait, time out for fun. So you said that you didn't do anything about it, but like when you packed the order, did you just pack the order, or did you, it's Kilian.
Handwritten notes. I mean, what does this look like?
So that at that point, we did have enough volume where I had to stop. My hand would fall off if I kept writing the notes. Otherwise, every order got a handwritten note. At that point, I think I had 50 to fulfill. I ignored all of them. I packed that one. I wrote the note. I started going towards the car. Then I opened it again, tore it apart, make sure that the bandanas are still actually in there. Double check the note that there's no typos, added a sticker, repacked it again, and drove just that package to our local postal annex to drop it off, and just didn't fulfill anything else for 2 days.
So fast forwarding, Kilian does indeed wear the East Peak ice bandana to a 14-hour, 19-minute third place run at Western States. Paulius, what does it feel like as a founder of this, very early stage company, having this moment? Because, to me, it feels like whenever we're building our businesses, you need a break every once in a while. Like, you just need something good to happen. Like, you need to have a moment, not only for the practical revenue that comes in to sustain the business, but also the morale to continue going. And this is that moment for you in the very early phases. So just talk us through the emotional processing of seeing Kilian actually use the product and have it at least be a small contributing factor to his amazing run.
I'm going to verbatim read what I texted you at around noon during Western States in all caps.
All caps. Very important.
Debo, you're crushing the live stream. Multiple people at the top of the field are wearing our bandana. I've never been so excited. This is while he's doing the live stream.
Yeah.
I think the excitement started a few days before, because we just saw a photo of him wearing it and him doing his photo ops of getting ready for the actual event. And then a YouTube video comes out and Kilian runs up to a river. Someone throws him a fully packed East Peak ice bandana. He puts it on. He runs off into the distance. There's a good 3-minute segment of just ice bandana. And I'm like, okay, the only way this, in my head, the thing that I'm thinking about is, how does this go wrong? It's like, well, we're going to release this YouTube video before States and he's not going to wear it. So don't do anything. Once the race was on and I actually saw him wearing it, it was relief combined with stress, combined with thinking, if he doesn't perform, are people going to blame us? Oh my goodness. Because it is a unique product that is generally a little bit smaller than what's out in market, and that's very much on purpose. So I was just hoping that people would get it, and they did. They were excited in the chat about it. And I was sleep deprived and I was glued. So I was feeding my 2-week-old child through the night. I woke up, I watched most of the live stream, and my heart rate was just jacked up. It was a wonderful day.
What happens after that? Now we're in the aftermath of Western States. You got the result. Kilian's obviously a big fan of the product.
Yeah.
Is this turn into a collab? Does this turn into a partnership? Like, where do you take it from here? It's pretty clear he's going to keep using this for all the hot races. What do you do with things? Or does that just give you the cachet to have conversations with other athletes that you potentially wanted to target? Is athlete marketing even part of it? Or was that just like a one-time lucky break? And you think that, this is like product-led marketing where we're just going to make good stuff and let the people do the talking for us?
Yeah. And I think also, Paulius, it'd be interesting to hear you talk about, because we went running recently and it seemed to me like you were wrestling with this, like, trying to capitalize off Kilian's likeness, kind of thing. where you draw the line about like being respectful of, yeah, he used his own money to pay for this. It's not necessarily my place to, try and capitalize on it, but also it is an important moment for the company.
I emailed him. I got product feedback. He said he loved it and he wanted ice in the handles at the front of his neck. I said, got it. You got it. So that's what we're working on now. But outside of that, I think we can leave that moment be where it is on its own and just kind of move forward. I think the people that pay attention to Western states saw that. And I don't think we need to continue to kind of pull on that thread and just continue to just make the product better as it goes. I think the doors that open from there is now we have, I guess cachet you said would be a word to use here. Enough street cred to become an authority in cooling in the space. So that's our wedge now, right? So what else can we make that we can apply some of the same design principles in what I would say is a mostly ignored category that is becoming more important over time into performance.
Yeah, I mean, look at Nike ACG. That's like their first big thing of like, oh, we're working on cooling too. Like of all the things for Nike to lead with, cooling being at top of their list is very interesting. Actually, I'd love to dig back into the history of the ice bandana because I lived in the Bay Area and like I was never boiling hot when I lived there. So of all the products you could have made, how did the ice bandana even come to be?
Sure. It comes back to experimentation. We were making the socks and we're thinking, okay, if we're going to do a full line, what else should we do? Let's just go through the exercise of making anything best in market at all. Anything. It doesn't matter what it is. Let's just take a look at it, run the numbers of what development costs would look like, figure out what other competitors we would have. And I had recently just finished the Javelina 100 and I had bruising on my collarbone from the bandana just bouncing and just the ice, just 3-4 pounds of ice just hitting my collarbone for 100 miles. And I said, okay, what else is out there? Well, nothing good. I talked to a few folks and they said this might be smart because no one's actually paying attention to this. I don't think you're going to have any competition if you really put some thought behind this. And so what really spurred that was just running Javelina and at the same time having conversations with my co-founder, George, around let's see what happens if we just make something that is absolutely best.
Introduce us to George a little bit, Paulius. I don't think I've ever met him. How did you guys come to be partners?
He was a product marketer at Loom. And when I moved to Marin and found myself a little bit isolated without a tribe, he went and he actually showed me all the trails around Marin. He showed me all the group runs. And then I think a few months later, I was like, George, look, I actually have it here. I've made this sock. What do you think? It's a terrible sock. But here are my thoughts, and all these people are really awesome. What do you think? And at the same time, he was generally thinking what was next as well, and we just kind of continue to iterate, and I now handle the R&D, he does the marketing, and I think we push each other in just the right ways with complementary skill sets, because you don't want me to package up a product and sell it to people. You want George to do that.
So real quick, sticking with the wedge into the market idea and why it's important, having just returned home from UTMB, what's clear is that there are a lot of players in the market now. It's never been more competitive in the trail space. So maybe talking about how you view the market itself, the competitive dynamic, but also how East Peak can provide something different and valuable, whether it's this ice bandana, further cooling innovation or cooling product, or other things in a way that, I don't know, justifies the existence. You know, there's always this saying of like, the world doesn't need another brand, right? But like at the end of the day, it does, right? Because we're trying to get to a feeling, not necessarily, everything else that we've mentioned. But I don't know. I think it's just interesting. Like, it's never been more competitive now. So how do you find your space within the market?
I think we break that down into the two vectors that we actually build product in, which is either it's going to have to be best in market or we have to just absolutely love it. And so the way that currently works is you'll go to our website, you'll pick up a nice bandana, you might add a hat to our cart. And we're trying to figure out how to actually move the metric of cart size up, because one of the first things that we realized sold well was a pair of socks. But if you're doing $22 orders for one pair of socks, it's not a very good business. We released a 3-pack that started going up. And then all of a sudden this starts turning into sustainable and a profitable business. But the way we differentiate is we pick a vector right now that's going to be threefold: cooling, chafing, and wind. And we're going to dive deep into each one of those and see where can we actually be best in market. So we justify our existence by solving actual problems for actual trail runners and making sure that we make something that we love. And then on top of that, we add a few products that we find a fabric along the way that we find just absolutely sublime that has unique properties. Yeah, we'll make a shirt out of it because we love it. And I think part of that is also motivated by the fact that we're doing this part-time, George and I. So everything that we do, we must find some joy out of. Otherwise, it's not really worth doing the small add-ons that just kind of exist to exist. Mm-hmm. So you won't see something released from us that we are either not absolutely in love with or we know that it's absolutely best for that use case. Mm.
I'd love to hear you talk a little bit more about the R&D, because that's a big part of, your side of the partnership. And mm-hmm. What does that look like in practice? Do you have, obviously, like, you have this background of engineering. What does your team look like that's probably helping you get to this point? Like discovering the fabrics, actually designing the products, getting the pack ready for, all the different elements that go into it. How do you kind of assemble your team that's helping you get that done?
Yeah. So I'll handle the lighter things. And I like learning different So let's take a pair of socks as an example, because that's the thing that I've always handled and still do. I like playing with different compression techniques, understanding exactly how much elastane and nylon is required and what different variants of it there are to actually make something that fits around your foot in a way that doesn't slip, that doesn't cause blisters. But for anything more complicated than a sock, I'll hire out a product developer that actually does the tech packs for us, and then I'll have someone else source the factories, which takes a huge load off of it and actually enables us to do this. Not full-time, because looking for factories when you're green in the industries can be near impossible. Mm-hmm. And everything, I would say, at least from my experience, is set up in a way where we are going to make things as fast and as low quality as possible, and you really have to push for things to be durable, to be good, to be exactly the way that you want them. Mm. I think a recent anecdote is we're working on a windbreaker, and one of the tests that we do, and it's a very miserable test, is we will have a hose out and we'll have a leaf blower, and one person wears the jacket, another one gets blown with the hose and the leaf blower at the same time. And it just feels awful. But one of the things we discovered is we want a certain amount of breathability for the windbreaker. But a good benchmark for us is the Patagonia Houdini, which has like actually fairly good rain repellent properties as well. And it's been around for more than a decade now. So we use that as our benchmark. And as we're testing all these samples, we reach out to the factories and they all said, oh yeah, we just haven't applied the coatings to make these water repellent. So you want us to commit to bulk production without us actually testing the product the way it's going to be. Mm. And that led to all of a sudden us eliminating 2 manufacturing partners that refused to do that for us in samples. We had to start from zero except for one fabric, finding new fabrics because the fabric manufacturers won't actually make it the way we want it to, so we can actually test the product. So it's a lot of learning really hard lessons somewhere along the way, I would say. But thankfully, I hire out help that we can trust to actually help with some of that. But we still find weird, quirky things, such as, commit to making thousands of jackets without seeing how they actually work.
Amazing. Could you actually, just going into the X's and O's a little bit, talk about tech packs? Explain to the audience specifically what this is and why it's important, because I think a lot of people who have made stuff before understand what it is, but if you haven't actually gone through working with a factory, maybe you're not familiar with what a tech pack is. Could you just kind of give a primer, and maybe even, something that you've learned along this process as you've been producing material?
Yeah. So I would describe a tech pack as a set of very incredibly explicit instructions that get more explicit over time of exactly how to make something. So this involves how's the zipper situated on the product? What are the exact lengths of measurement of what type of fabric that you have? Let's say you have a vest, right? Does the zipper go over here, or does the zipper go over here? And what type of zipper is it? So the more components you have, the more pages these tech packs turn into. And when you get into more of the complicated garments, such as bottoms that have a lot of storage, or your vests or something like that, these can turn into dozens of pages, because these instructions need to be explicit enough to not only communicate something to a factory that is not near you, but also lives in an entirely different culture and just simply makes different assumptions. And so when you get these back, you always look at them and they're just the first iteration never looks the same, and you have to go through, adjust your tech pack, and just make it that much more specific up until you just iterate enough to have a product that you love.
So as you've been doing deep in this R&D process, I know one of the things you and I have talked about is, how you develop these skills and what the long-term roadmap looks like, because there are a lot of different ways that you could go. Has your thinking evolved on that at all, about what it makes sense to tackle now? It sounds like cooling might be the place where you're going to emphasize here in the short-term future, but has it made you think further long-term about where you want to devote your R&D efforts? Because I know, just so we don't beat around the bush, I know you're interested in creating footwear eventually.
Yeah, eventually. We'll see if that ever actually comes to fruition, because it's simply just a different business. East Pico started with the idea of possibly making a shoe, and I'm honestly really grateful we haven't.
Say more about that. Why is it so different?
It has become an incredibly crowded space that I personally, I wouldn't say I know exactly how to compete within. And you have one form factor to really work with, right? And there's only so many materials that are available to you to innovate on. And it very quickly, if a market gets more saturated, it very quickly becomes about material science, and that innovation is all of a sudden out of budget. So I think if we were to enter the shoe market now, we'd be a little bit too late. While getting into cooling and some of the other things that we see gaps in, I think the timing's actually quite right for us. So I think when it comes down to it, why I'm glad we didn't do footwear is I think the timing would have worked out not in our favor.
It does seem like the vectors that you're chasing make a lot, seems like there's a lot more room to move around and a lot more innovation that's just so readily available, where footwear innovation, I don't know. Well,
also, what you just mentioned too is that it's a lot more expensive, which leads us to, one of the things we like to talk about, and especially in these early stage startup spotlight episodes that we do, is how you're funding the business. What does it look like? What are the trade-offs between bootstrapping versus seeking outside capital? Where do you sit there, and do you have any thoughts or learnings or lessons for the audience?
It's George and I are self-funding this. I think we funded it with enough capital that forces us to be incredibly scrappy, which I think there's always value in that. Otherwise, you get a little bit spoiled and you don't learn enough. But we have enough to, I think, take a couple of really, really big swings. And that should give us an opportunity to make a mistake, to get one thing right, to then iterate, find our wedge. And I think one of our wedges came much earlier than we expected.
Do you anticipate, it's maybe too early to tell, but do you anticipate changing your mind in that respect? You know, if you had a great idea for a shoe, in that case, it probably would be impractical to self-fund the business, though I'm making an assumption.
Yeah, then you have to seek outside capital. I mean, it's $1 million to make a shoe, minimum. That's to make it, and then there's marketing, and then there's iterations, and then there's how long it actually takes to test the product, because you have to see if someone these days, the standard for a shoe I would make would be it has to last 600 miles, which takes X amount of time to actually burn through those shoes, no matter who you are. But as far as changing our mind, I think that was the initial question, right? Is where have we changed our minds? I think more of the budget's going to go towards cooling.
Yeah, you had sort of the, I don't know, maybe, I guess the Killian moment. I was going to say the Oprah moment, you know, where you get like put on the map in a major way, and then you have to put resources against that, you know, but I think it also kind of validates what you're thinking of the different vectors worth pursuing right out of the gates. Like you got validation so early on.
I mean, the other thing that's confidence inducing on focusing and cooling is we have one sole athlete, Aaron Kubala, and he's a 200 mile specialist. He tested the first version of the ice bandana in the Atacama Desert. I think the ad just started running today on that. But everything else that we develop for cooling, he will go and just beat to the absolute bone. So it already fits well within the structure that we have with the main athlete that we test with, amongst others. So I think we're set up quite well for that right now.
Speaking of ad, talk about the customer acquisition strategy. How are you putting East Peak in front of new potential customers, whether it's to build the brand or to actually convert?
There's going to be Instagram ads. Different things convert better than others. The ice bandana had a ridiculous return on ad spend where we're like, okay, there's no other choice but to make this into a better product next season, figure out how we can be a voice in cooling and go from there. So digitally, that really worked out. I think for other items, there's no shortcuts around simply being present in the community. I think we can do that in a couple different ways. We consider our B2B sales as part of marketing budget, simply because if you're in a specialty store that actually cares about its community, that cares about its runners, and you're able to put something in front of someone that someone can feel, I think it's going to go quite a long way for us before we can actually go out and have a physical presence and do a run together and everything else. So usually the way the motion for us currently goes in terms of getting something in front of a customer, it'll go us, then our local community, then let's get it into SFRC, see what the feedback is on that. Then update the catalog, give it to new retailers, and see if they reorder. And that's incredibly good signal because they really don't have to. But
what you're saying, just to pause for a second, what you're saying though is that from the jump here, you're orienting the business around brick and mortar retail sales, which I think is somewhat unusual in 2025. So I think it'd be interesting to talk about that. I mean, I think we are seeing this momentum going back to retail, something Aaron and I have talked about as it relates to Nike a few times, right? Like their return to reinvesting in retail, but still a lot of brands that are spun up, and your early phase of the company is D2C focused in the early phases.
Yeah. I think part of the reason we're able to do that is we decided to just do R&D slowly and make sure we're fiscally responsible. So everything that's landed is multiplied by 4, and we aim for that 4x markup on everything that comes to us. So we're able to do wholesale and still make a little bit of money. While we could make things faster, find a manufacturer faster, that's a little bit more expensive. But then wholesale essentially becomes not an option simply because we're talking about 2x margins or less, and then you're either breaking even or losing money on wholesale. So I consider brick and mortar to be part of the strategy for us to just get in front of more, just get in front of more eyes, that eventually feeds back to our online store, where we're still going to make a little bit more money. Usually, working with a retailer, it's about a 50% discount for selling to them versus selling directly online.
It seems like you guys have been pretty fiscally responsible and you're self-funding this whole thing. But in the end, is this the intention for the whole thing? Is this meant to be a full-time deal, or is it actually pretty great just having a job and being able to put resources into it from that and not having the pressure of having to draw a salary from the whole thing?
The intention is for this to turn into something that I can focus the next decade of my life on, and actually be able to build a life that is aligned to my current values and raising my son and traveling and being in the mountains. So I generally like to look at what do I want out of life for the next 10 years, and I think East Peak fits right into that. So the intentions, part of the reason we're being fiscally responsible and everything is focused around that, is so we can make a profitable business as soon as possible. And if we're struggling to make enough for us to go full time, we have enough leverage all of a sudden to go raise maybe a small round to actually do that, because X and Y and Z products are already profitable. So I mean, what we've noticed as we've built this company is usually the first round is break even, and the second run of a product actually starts to make money for us, except for the ice bandana, which was profitable from day one, which was awesome.
Wow. Lucy, anything else that you want to get to before we get to BPC? This is a cool one.
Yeah. I love being able to see the early stages of this stuff, but also like it's not that early. You guys have actually had some like pretty breakout stuff already, which this is fun to learn about and see how you're kind of managing it. I think a lot of people, you know, to have a moment like that, you were actually kind of prepared for it and you were ready to go, where sometimes it kind of catches people flat footed and they, you know, have to race to catch up with it. But I feel like you had done a lot of the work to get yourself to a point where having a moment like this, although it was sort of a stroke of, you know, luck, also you were ready to take advantage of it and build on top of it, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Would have been problematic if all of a sudden Western States happens, we sell out of bandanas and then we have to make more and we're losing money on each one.
Yeah. Well, something tells me there's going to be a lot of East Peak cooling technology on the Western States course in 2026. I mean, what comes off to me here, Paulius, is having known you and watched you build your business from a distance, admittedly, is you're just a very competent and qualified individual. Maybe it's from your time selling mosquito repellent, or maybe it's all the other skills that you've developed in and around the technology sector for a long time. And we should say too, just to make it explicit, East Peak is the name that we use for the summit of Mount Tamalpais that we run to all the time. So it has sort of that local significance, and it's also a great name and a great brand. Actually, I've told you this, Paulius, but when the North Face was developing footwear, that was a name that I suggested for a product, for a shoe that they made, that ended up being, it ultimately came to market as the Cardiac, which was also named after an important place in Marin County that's significant for trail runners. But East Peak is not only rolls off the tongue, but it has that special significance. And I think it's a great platform to build a brand off of. Any closing comments from you, Paulius?
I'm just generally happy to be here.
Legend. All right. Well, we close all these episodes with BPC brand, products, content. I'm sure you brought something interesting for the audience.
Yeah. I think it's watching On refocus on trails and kind of transform itself in a very intentional way. So they've got a new super shoe out and a trainer to match. The Cloud Ultra Pro. It's my default racing shoe. It became my default racing shoe since running the first 10 miles in it. But I think what they've also gotten right is that I know exactly who is running in it. It's Katie Scheid and Jeff Margavero. And led with a single product. So I can see their focus and their intention behind it. I've watched enough YouTube videos about the engineering of it and how they didn't focus that much on just propulsion, and they wanted a shoe that would work for Western States and UTMB. So you see it on athletes in mountains, you see it on athletes in these faster races. And I have a personal connection just watching Jeff lap me at Javelina while chasing David Roche. And as a new player to the market, I think I have a lot of conversations where people are skeptical on entering trail simply because they hadn't taken it seriously. And my take on it is as a new brand, be very afraid because they have a very big marketing budget, and figure out how you're going to differentiate from On as they take this big swing into trail.
Yeah. It's funny. I was just recording a podcast with Tom Evans, UTMB champ, and he mentioned that ASICS shoe that he was wearing is, like what you mentioned. If you default more towards the propulsion, makes it really hard on your body when you're hiking, like specifically on your calves and ankles and Achilles and stuff like that. So I'm not entirely sure the technology of the ASICS shoe, but that's effectively what is in the Cloud Ultra Pro, which is a fantastic product. Good one.
I think on top of that, all their content that they're releasing, it just feels like they get trail running. Nothing feels manufactured. It feels authentic, and it has the right people in front of it. So I'm a bit inspired, and at the same time thinking, how do I do something different?
Yeah. Lucy.
Okay, I got one for you. This is a show and tell. This tiny little thing right here is the weight of a Snickers bar. You can see it in my hand. This camera fits. It's magnetic. It fits on all kinds of stuff, but it delivers the same quality of footage as my GoPro. It's a third of the size. It's called the Insta360 Go Ultra, and it just came out like a couple weeks ago, and I got my hands on one. Also got a chance last week when I was in China to go to their office, but this little guy right here for running could be the game changer. There's actually a pendant mount, so you don't have to wear a chest mount like the big harness that everybody's wearing when they're riding bikes or running or whatever. Now you literally wear like a little necklace, and this thing fits on. This camera is insane. I'm a mountain bike nerd, but also a camera nerd, and this is one of the first POV cameras that I've been like, oh, this is different. This actually works. This does the stuff that I actually need it to do. And it's the Insta360 Go Ultra, this little guy.
So a Snickers bar, I just Googled it, is 52.7 grams. So that is light.
Super, super light. You know what's crazy about it? Actually, like, my kids can wear a POV camera now. Like, if I put a GoPro on my kid's helmet, it would drag their head down. Oh. This thing is light enough that I can actually like let my kids get POV footage of them riding bikes, which only adds to the stoke that I'm trying to create for them as they get into mountain biking. So this is actually solving more than one problem for me right now. But yeah, I mean, this is actually, to give you context, this is the same size as a GoPro battery, and it's a full-on 4K camera.
My God.
It's out of control.
Out of control. Is GoPro dead?
I mean, after this thing comes out,
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I definitely have an opinion, but I'll save it.
Okay. A future episode. All right. Well, I read a book that I know Lutzi will appreciate, which was Ryan Holiday's Stillness is the Key while I was in Europe. A fantastic read when you're deep in like heads down work mode, when you've got 10 minutes to just stare at a book before you drop into a jet lag induced slumber. So I would definitely recommend it. A quick and easy read like a lot of Ryan Holiday's books are. I just really appreciate his stuff. And then I think it would be fun here at the end too to just re-emphasize something I was just talking about, having just talked to Tom Evans about the shoe that he was wearing at UTMB. One of the things he said was that they're bumping it, in all likelihood they're bumping the release date up about 6 months to next summer, obviously to capitalize off Tom Evans' big win at UTMB. Also in second place at UTMB was an American guy named Ben Demon, also an ASICS athlete. So feels relevant to squeeze in here in BPC to just shout out ASICS, who really had an explosive moment at UTMB that I'm sure their employees are celebrating at HQ. And Japan and at their various regional offices. It'll be interesting to see how ASICS approaches the trail category after such a massive moment.
That would make Tom Evans 2 for 2 on like super shoe brand launches with big wins, right?
Isn't that so true? Yeah.
Because he won Western States with the new Adidas shoe that was like just coming out. And then everybody was like flocking to that. And now he just did it again.
Lucy, did you see the shoey at the end? So, you know, Tom's a Red Bull athlete, so you'll appreciate this. This is the perfect way to close. Tom, like the consummate professional that he is, he recognizes that this moment is critical not only for him but for his sponsors. Somebody hands him a Red Bull can at the finish line. He takes off his shoe that he's just run 110 miles in, pours a can of Red Bull in it, and then drinks the Red Bull out of the shoe.
It's disgusting.
I mean, it's disgusting, but also what a moment for the HQ in Austria too, right?
Oh, I mean, yeah. I mean, I'm sure that photo made the rounds. That's amazing.
Yeah. So good. Paulius, you're the man, buddy. It's good to see you. Let's go out for a run one of these days. All the best with East Peak. Thanks for sharing your story.
Thanks, Mo.